Okay.
So I read over your form just
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Separation anxiety,
Yep.
some selective dog reactivity.
Yes.
Previous training, still having trouble with the recall.
Yeah.
Okay, so go ahead and fill me in a bit more on, this is Riley?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Riley. Yeah, it's funny, like I feel like, you know, I did training with her when she was a puppy and we went to dog parks a lot and tried to like expose her to other dogs, and she had mostly like positive experiences. There were a few that weren't, like a few dogs that kind of went after her. And then, yeah, I guess like over time, it's okay. She's sort of developed more and more like dog reactivity. And so it's like very, yeah, it's sort of selective, and like some dogs that like when we walk by, she'll just like randomly snap at for like, and then, you know, but I do often see that it's dogs who are sort of giving her like a signal, like I can kind of tell they're like kind of staring her down or like, you know, and then there's other dogs that she's more easygoing with, and she'll kind of like tolerate, and she'll play a little bit, but yeah, like inside settings, she really like struggles. It seems like she just doesn't, I don't know, she doesn't pick up on like the fact that the dogs aren't friendly, or she's like just very like concerned with like the resources too. I feel like any like food scraps on the ground, anything like that, she's like super protective over.
Is this like in your apartment, in a friend's apartment?
Any indoor setting, definitely like works in my apartment. I don't have dogs over anymore, like I don't do that, but like last year I brought her home to my family's house, and they had gotten 2 dogs last year. They're like puppies, and they're like super friendly, easygoing, and we couldn't like let them around each other off leash. Like we had them, we sort of tried to do like introductions slowly, like one at a time, outdoor first, then indoor, and like have them on leash sort of like across the room from each other and see how it went. And like Riley was just like, she couldn't relax, like she was like growling at them, and then she ended up like going after one of them and like bit their ear. So at that point we kind of just like kept them separate the rest of the visit. And yeah, it just like makes it hard, you know, it's like my parents have these dogs now, and I'm like, well, am I ever gonna be able to bring it home again? And just, yeah, like situations like that. And I just feel like there's something I can do about it, because some dogs, she is easygoing with outside, and it's like if I could figure out how to get her to, she doesn't like listen to me in those moments, you know, like she's just pure like, you know, tunnel vision, like I'm gonna freak out at this dog type of deal. Yeah, and so the separation anxiety, like I was living in Vermont when I got her, and we were there for I think 3 years, and then last year we moved to Illinois, and that's when the separation anxiety was like, it just like came on full force. It's okay. And she was like ripping up my carpet when I left, like I couldn't leave. And so now she's on like Prozac, and you know, like I have other like, they've given me like trazodone, but I don't really like giving it to her. It just feels like it doesn't really do anything, and then I'm just feeling like I'm giving her extra medications. But I recently moved like again this past like a couple weeks ago, and she's been doing better at the new apartment. So I was like really worried the separation anxiety would just be like completely bad again moving, but she's adjusted a bit better. I got like a pet cam so I can like see how she reacts when I leave, and she does kind of like just stand around and like, but then she eventually like settles and lays down, so that's better than it was last year when we moved.
With the dogs that you said that she's like selective with,
Yeah.
Have you noticed any consistency with like calmer dogs, younger dogs, males, females, small dogs, big dogs?
She does better with calmer dogs.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I would say like younger dogs too, unless they come on like too strong, like all over her face, kind of like she hates like when dogs like lick her face. But yeah, like I mean, I was walking the other day and there was a puppy like that wanted to like say hi, and like they were totally fine. Riley was like trying to play. So it's like, yeah, I don't know dogs that she finds non-threatening, but if there's any dog that's like kind of giving any sort of like aggressive vibes, she's like immediately like no, and like just goes off. That happened yesterday. I was walking down the street, and this dog was, it was like a small dog, and it was like barking at her, and so she just like immediately was like, like, yeah. It was just like, no, you know, I'm like, well, why are you doing that?
Sure.
So, and then, you know, when that happens, she's not listening to me. And she has the same, like, she has an issue with cats too. She's like super aggressive towards cats. Like just barking and like howling and freaking out. And again, like my family has cats, we have to keep them upstairs whenever I go home. And if she sees like a cat across the road, it's like all hell breaks loose, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Not that's coming to mind at the moment. I mean, you can see like she like gets anxious, like she's visibly very, she shakes and whines
And this is like when she's in unfamiliar settings?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like I tried to bring her over to my friend's like new place, and she's like, let's leave, like let's go. She's like trying to like, get out the door the whole time. Yes. She's like, can we leave?
Sure.
Riley, it's okay.
The training that you did prior, I'm assuming like positive reinforcement type training, or?
Yeah.
Anything else?
I don't think so at the moment. Yeah, so she did like, I worked with a trainer a little bit back in Vermont, and she was like, she did pack walking, and like she would do some off-leash walking with like a group of dogs, and she was really good about like matching personalities, so Riley actually like always did well. There was never any like aggressive episodes or anything. And she would like ride in the car to this place with these other dogs, and I'm like, I can't even imagine that. So part of it I feel like must be like my presence, I don't know. But she wasn't very good at the recall. So like, you know, the dogs had to be pretty good at recall because she was doing like off leash, like woods walking. So after a while it just like wasn't working out because Riley was not returning. So yeah, I read that you use like an e-collar or something like that, and I've been like sort of wondering about that, just so I was curious.
Yeah, so I already keep you and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then I think the last thing was she actually goes or has been to daycare, and she does well there.
Yes, so she hasn't been in quite a while, but she was going. It's been probably 2 years since she's gone, so It's been a while. It was when like her dog direction, like I wasn't really bringing her to dog parks anymore because in that setting she wasn't doing great, but she never had issues at the daycare. But then like I like saw a trainer that worked there, and then he was kind of like, I'd rather you not like bring her here anymore just because like you're like, we haven't seen it, but the things you're saying, like he was like, maybe don't bring her, so then I stopped sending her, so.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah.
How old?
5.
5. And you had her since how long?
8 weeks old.
Okay, so 2 months.
Yeah.
And then when did you move from Vermont?
Like a year ago, last May, right around this time. Hello.
And then with COVID, did you start working from home and stuff?
Yeah, I'm a grad student, so I've been home all the time, like 24/7, and I'm actually going to be starting clinicals like June 1st, and so I'm going to be gone all the time.
Gotcha.
So yeah, like one thing, like I'm planning on getting a dog walker, but then I also saw like your daycare and saw that you're like, you know, seem to know a lot about dogs with some aggression issues, so I'm like, well, maybe like I wanted to get your opinion and see whether you thought she'd be like a good candidate, but if not, either way, like, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I'll give you options.
Yeah.
And then prior, so then like, let's say before May 2020.
Yeah.
Before COVID, were you leaving her for okay? Then March hits, right?
Yeah.
So then you are then home all the time.
Yeah.
And then you move in May, and then separation anxiety kicks in.
Yeah.
And then you move again, and her anxiety has been a bit better.
Yeah, it hasn't. Yeah, like it hasn't been as bad as it was when we moved last year. Like she's yeah. If I get up and leave suddenly, I'm like, oh, I forgot something in the car, and I like get up to leave. She's like howling. But if I like warn her, like then she does fine. Yeah. I turn on like classical music, I like do the whole thing, and then she like kind of just settles.
Any difference in neighborhood, like busy to quiet?
It's busier where we live now.
It's busier now?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
I don't think so. No.
Okay, so a lot of good information. Just trying to figure out a few things here so I can explain them to you. So it kind of sounds like when you had her as a pup and dog park stuff, she was very social. She had a couple of altercations from dogs, and then you start to see reactivity. Is that correct? Okay. So it sounds like what happened, or can happen, is, for example, very common for my clients whose dogs were social but then became reactive. 6 months in a year, they'll usually note some kind of like altercation, or like the dog was attacked off leash or at the dog park, whatever.
Yeah.
And they'll say like, yeah, the next day when I tried to take my dog to the dog park, it was a dog fight. Ever since then, it's like my dog sees a dog, they're reactive.
Yeah.
So what happens is the attack or the altercation causes distrust, especially if it's mishandled, which most of the time it's mishandled.
Yeah.
So then the dog starts to go into defensive, right? And they go like, okay, because you have to think in her world, she's primal. So like for you, when you walk outside, you're not really worried about being attacked, because like there's cops, there's laws, there's 911, there's my neighbors, right? Like you have like a layer of protection that you're aware of. Whereas for her, she does not. Okay, so that makes her vulnerable. The other thing is, if you're her handler, you're technically that layer of protection.
Right.
So like, if something happens and you mishandle the fight, so in her eyes, if she is attacked, most people go in and pull the dogs away from each other. Whereas what she would expect is for you to actually come in and attack that dog, to get that dog to disengage. Okay, so it wouldn't be like, let's separate the dogs. She's like, kick this dog's ass because this dog's kicking my ass. Right? And obviously people don't do it that way.
Right.
So then that's when the distrust happens. So she thinks, well, if you're not willing to step in, I'm going to do it, right? And then when it comes to the inconsistencies, you said it earlier when you said like non-threatening, right?
Yeah.
Is dogs are masters of reading body language and energy. That is their world. And even humans, like we're okay at it, but we're so used to verbal, relying on verbal, that we don't really rely on body language that much. But I'm sure you've watched movies, or maybe in life, where like you're lying to me and I can tell because you're doing this, right? You're reading the body language, which is overriding what they're saying. So body language always comes first in the dog world. So then here, when she's on the walk, you said, well, if the dog looks really tense, it looks like there's any kind of threat there, boom, she's on it. Because she's like, no, this ain't gonna happen again, so I'm gonna become defensive. So in her world, it's kill or be killed. So she's just putting up that front, and maybe she's able, or not able, but willing to reinforce it. Every dog is different. Just because they're reactive doesn't mean they're gonna follow through should that threat come into space. So like, let's say I get dogs that are human reactive, and they seem like they're gonna bite you. Then I come in, I don't have it in here, but I have like a suit or a special sleeve that protects me, that I can touch the dog. And if the dog is gonna follow through, it'll bite the sleeve or my pants or whatever. Most dogs are bluffers. So then you touch them and they just shut up. Because like, okay, well, I wasn't gonna do anything, but you call my bluff, right? So what would happen post that, just depends on the situation. But that's how like all that stuff works out. When it comes to separation anxiety, I think it wasn't so much, I think it was partially the move. But COVID flipped a lot of things on its head, and separation anxiety cases and territorial aggression cases went through the roof once COVID happened, because now it was dog at owner home all the time, people not coming over. So the new norm before the dog became, it's just us, right? Whereas before, like I had a client whose dog was super social, loved everybody that would come into the home. COVID happened, and then like 6 months later, they had their first guest, and the dog went after the guest. And she was like, oh my God, like what happened? I'm like, it makes sense, because to your dog, now that's weird. So the dog's like, yo, who are you coming into our home? Whereas before it was a regular thing. So it's happened a lot with people. Separation anxiety, the dog gets used to you being around 24/7. Okay, so I think it was, you were leaving for school in March, and then you weren't leaving for school. Then you move a few months later to a new state, city. I'm assuming busier than it is in Vermont. That counts as well. So then, she gets stressed because you're leaving or whatever, and she of course releases that stress out on like she's becoming destructive.
And the place we were living before, like I lived with like 5 other people. We like lived in a house, and then I moved to this place, and it was like just me. Gotcha.
That's also a factor too. Like other energies. Her getting used to 5 people and then everybody leaving. It's a lot of like kind of variables there. So that's typically how that stuff works out. I'm trying to think. The daycare stuff, I'm not really too concerned about. The recall stuff that's not a problem. Yeah, I think that was it behaviorally.
Yeah.
So when it comes to like how I train, as you know, I use e-collar. That's my primary way of training.
Okay.
Any dog that comes in here or puppy over 6 months, we put on e-collar.
Okay.
Any puppy under 6 months, we do the standard click and treat, you know, positive reinforcement stuff, gentle leader stuff.
Yep.
But once a puppy hits 6 months, dogs tend to treat them as adults.
Yeah.
They correct them and then they behave around them as adults.
Right.
So at that stage, I begin to train them to an adult level, which means I can get up to off-leash reliability even with the puppy.
Right.
So like we had a Adobe puppy who came in, she came in at 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
And you can actually start as young as 2 months. It's just the psychology of people and how they feel about it kind of kicks into play.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, she was 4 months. She came in. She did a 4-week boarding train with us. E-collar. She's phenomenal. You know, and so when she left her at 5 months, she was just everything's off leash.
Yeah.
But it's all about how you apply the tool and everything. But it's just how people think about it.
Yeah.
So the e-collar is perfectly safe to use. It's not electrocution. It's not a current running through your dog's body. You know, they can go in the water with it. It's fully waterproof. The technology is used on humans. So you're a physical therapist or chiropractor.
Right.
They use stem therapy. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I had it done, yeah.
So that's an e-collar. Okay, so it's electric but not electricity is usually how I describe it to people.
Yeah.
Is that when there is a slight current that only makes contact with the muscle, so then you'll only see the muscle twitch.
Right.
Okay, but you would not feel anything anywhere else.
Yeah. It's more just like that shock factor kind of.
Or not shock, but it's the way how you. So the term shock comes from a couple things.
Yeah.
One, old school collars only had like 5 levels.
Okay.
Low, medium, high, higher, highest. You know.
Yeah.
And the one we use now has 127.
Okay.
So 5 and 127 are the same. I just happen to have 127 more divisions.
Mm.
So before, 3, your dog would be yelping, 2, your dog wasn't listening.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now 40, 60, 50, 49, 51, I can really fine tune it to the dog, to the situation, to the stress levels. Like we can really kind of pinpoint things here.
Okay.
So it's much more refined now. The model, like they range anywhere from like ½ mile to 1 mile range because they're meant for hunting dogs. So if they send their dog out to like fetch a bird or something like that, the dog's going very, very far. So for the standard family pet, obviously plenty of range.
Yep.
Fully waterproof system, both the transmitter and the receiver, so you could be in the pool with the remote and she could swim in the pool and everybody's perfectly fine. Okay. So shock usually comes from the old school term because they were more shocking because it was so abrasive. The other thing is it's just a positive reinforcement front in dog training, trying to deter people from using this tool because they use words like shock and punishment and torture and pain and all this stuff because it makes people feel bad to think like, oh, you're shocking your dog to make them listen. That's usually how that works, right?
Yeah.
And I go, no. I'm like, if we were actually electrocuting dogs, like, do you think that would really be a thing?
Right.
Right? So it's electric and not electricity. It's just a muscle contraction.
Yeah.
The reason why it's such an effective tool, in my opinion, is because dogs are physical animals. So you noted earlier she like bit the dog's ear, right? So that dog crossed the boundary, and she goes, I'm not going to take this anymore. And go and communicate to the dog using physicality. You need to respect my space.
Yeah.
Right, and I'm willing to go, this is like a warning, I'm willing to go to the extent to make you respect my space. Then that happens, right? So dogs don't have language like we do. They don't have the complex communication that we have right now with me being able to explain like all these concepts and stuff, right? Dogs are super simple. They growl, they bark, and they bite.
Right.
You know, maybe a few things in between. So here, I like to think of the e-collar as a bite on a button.
Okay.
It allows me to nip and bite the dog at 127 different levels. Okay. So the way we teach it, most people tend to think is punishment based, which means if I say sit and the dog doesn't sit, I use the e-collar. That's how most people think it works. Okay. That's not how it actually works. Okay. So we have we would be called punishment based training, meaning if you don't do it, I punish you. Okay. What we do is what's called pressure work. Okay. So pressure is all over the place. Growing up, we have peer pressure. There's confrontational pressure. So like if people get in an argument, you see them get close, right, face to face. Sometimes it escalates to physicality. You drive. Have you been in the expressway? Have you ever had a car drive real close to you?
Yeah.
And then so that makes you feel uncomfortable, right? So that's spatial pressure. And you might, switch lanes. You might speed up. You might not do anything, or you might hit the brakes.
Yeah.
But that pressure they're putting on you is making you feel a certain way to garner a response. Whether or not you respond or how you respond is just dependent on you.
Right.
So e-collar is just another form of pressure. And pressure, in my opinion, is the best way that all animals learn. So here, what we do is we shape everything. Okay, so even if the dog has training, I get dogs that are trained by the trainers, even on e-collar, and I have to re-teach the e-collar a lot of times because it's done punishment based, so the dog is just like constantly in the fear of what's going to happen because they don't know where it's coming from.
Right.
Or if they've done food, or if they did prong collar training, food only isn't reliable. So I have to lay a remote over that so the dog goes, oh, like sit really does mean sit,
Okay.
And if it's prong collar, it's good because it's a type of form of, or it's a form of pressure. However, it's not the same as e-collar. So think of each training method like a language. So if I take the food and I go like this with the dog, I'll get a sitting position. So that's like to get the sit, I'm using this language, sign language for example. For a prong collar, if I pull up on the prong, it'll put pressure on the neck and usually get this kind of response from the dog. So I'm using that kind of language to make the dog sit. So I can make the dog sit doing this, or I can make the dog sit doing this, right? Then there's e-collar. So then we have to teach the dog that when they feel the e-collar, in that moment, what do I need them to do, okay? So we're teaching them the language of e-collar. So if I pull up, have you ever pulled up and pressed down to make a dog sit before?
Yeah. I mean, she'll sit mostly on command unless she's distracted. Then yes, I will do
You
that.
use that, right? So one, that's pressure. You're using leash pressure, right? And hand pressure to shape something. And when she does it, you would stop and maybe praise her, okay? So what we would do is, obviously the dog does not know what the e-collar is,
Right.
Is first we have to find the dog's working level, which means what's the number that's going to motivate the dog to give me a response, okay? Because if it's not concerning to the dog, they're not going to care about it. So you just see them kind of staring off into the distance and you'll see the muscle twitching, but they just don't care about it. So we need a number that the dog goes, hey, I don't like that, how do I turn it off? Okay, so we find that, and then for example, I would pull up, I would lightly push down to guide as the collar goes off. Okay, so I'm pressing the button as I'm doing this. And then when the dog sits, everything disappears.
Okay.
My hand, the leash pressure, and the remote pressure.
Okay.
So the dog goes, oh, that thing I didn't like go my way. They get up, I pull up, push down, I tap, 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 the dog sits. I stop everything, the dog goes, oh, I got up, and it came back. I keep repeating that. So she thinks, all right, well, when I feel this thing and I feel this pressure going up, if I go into this position, everything disappears. If I get up, it kicks back in again, but when I sit back down, it disappears. So the dog starts to learn how to turn it on and how to turn it off. Okay, that's super important. Otherwise, you're kind of just remoting your dog for no reason, okay? So the dog has to know or has to learn how to turn off pressure.
Okay.
So the command that we always teach first is the heel. For a number of reasons. One, leash pulling is like a super common thing that people want to address. I get a lot of reactivity cases, so then leash walking is the precursor to working with leash reactivity. When a dog feels e-collar and there's no direction, what you'll usually see is they'll move around because they're trying to get away from the pressure because they don't know where it's coming from. So dog's first instinct is typically flight response. Okay.
Right.
So we don't want the dog to run away from us, obviously. So we use heel, which is a moving behavior, right? You're walking, to allow the dog to express the need to walk, to move in response to the e-collar, but then also teach them that when they feel the e-collar, it doesn't mean to move away from us, it means to come to us. Okay. And then when she comes to your side, everything turns off, and then we continue the exercise and we repeat. So she starts to think, okay, when I feel this, if I do this, it disappears, right? So again, we're teaching her how to turn off pressure. Plus, with leash walking, most people walk their dogs at least 3 times a day for the most part in the city of Chicago, so it gives you something that you can practice 3 times a day, 7 days a week. And that's super important. So because think of the e-collar as a stressor, because it is this uncomfortable. So if you practice something uncomfortable once a week or once a month, you're going to get over it very slowly. So we want something that we can do multiple times with the dog that will also allow her to express her need to move when she feels it. But at the same time, walking helps alleviate stress. So like the heel command has like so many benefits to it, which is why any trainer that kind of knows what they're doing would almost always teach heel first. Okay. So we cover the heel, and then we see what does heel fix. Okay. So heel can fix like 70 to 80% of problems. Overstimulation issues, reactivity issues, nerves, fear, anxiety. You can help the dog learn how to handle that better.
Yeah.
We cannot make your dog unanxious. Okay, if you have an anxious dog, it's just an anxious dog.
Yeah.
But we can teach her how to handle anxiety better.
Right.
Okay, so that's how that works. Same thing for humans. Like there's some people that are just anxious, and you can't make them unanxious. You know, even if you medicate them, they're still anxious. They're just like medicated. It's teaching them how do you handle that anxiety or how do you handle that nervousness or that fear. Same thing for your dog. So here with the e-collar, what we would most likely see in the beginning is you would see your dog's anxiety go up. Okay, it would go up in the context. It wouldn't go up as a like kind of like all the time type of thing. Okay, because anxiety is a stress response. E-collar is a stressor, but this is a controlled stressor. So in the beginning, when we're layering in the collar, and she feels it, she's going to get worked up, and she's going to want to know what to do. That's where you come in. That's where I come in, and we shape everything. So she starts to think, okay, like this thing I don't like, yeah, it comes in and out, but there's a method, there's something going on, and once she figures it out, it helps build her confidence. Okay, so you're technically putting her under stress, but you're working her through the stress and teaching her how to handle it. And over the course of time, we should start to see her be able to handle more things in life. And you should also see a decline in anxiety because now that she can handle more stressful things, other things won't stress her out, not make her as anxious. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So when it comes to that stuff, I don't know what your dog's number is going to be. Every case is different. That's something we figure out in the first class. So we always start low and we go up. So like with stim therapy, it's the same thing. They don't just come in and max out the machine. They go, we're going to start low, tell us when it becomes uncomfortable. They start to go up and you say, hey, right there, I don't like that. And they go, okay, we're going to go a little bit lower. How's that? And you're like, yeah, that's pretty good. I can tolerate that. All right, cool. We'll let the machine do its work now. Similar for the e-collar. We start low, we work our way up. We have to find a number that's going to work for Riley. That number may change according to the environment. May change if she's under stress. May change if she's being reactive. But it's really common sense based. Okay. So like, let's say you're in a quiet neighborhood and she's doing well. Your number is 25, and everything is spot on. When you come to a stop, she automatically sits. She's walking on your side with no tension. She's passing by dogs, no reactivity. Okay. And then you walk to the park, and there's a lot more going on. Right? There's more dogs. There's dogs running around, barking at her, and all that stuff. That number might go from 25 to 85. And it's not that she's yelping. It's just you need 85 to override all the stimuli that is going on in that environment. Okay. So this is all stuff that I help teach you to learn and recognize and how to adjust your collar as you go along. And then it's really just rinse and repeat at that point. Questions about any of that stuff?
I don't think so. Not at all. I mean, it makes sense so far.
Okay. So when it comes to like length of time and cost and stuff, it just depends on how much control you want, what you're trying to achieve, and then what approach you want to take. Okay. So I think you had said something about like a daycare training. Was that correct? Or
I was like curious about it.
So there's pros and cons. So I'll give you the pros of doing in person versus doing daycare training and all that stuff.
I think I would be curious about I definitely want to learn how to do it myself. But then I would be curious about daycare maybe if things were going well and you felt like she could be
Okay, so you're thinking of potential daycare, dog daycare, not daycare training.
Yes.
Okay, so that makes sense. Okay, so you're wanting in person. Okay, gotcha. So with in-person training, it's what I recommend typically to everyone, especially when it's behavioral cases. Because it is you that has to do all the learning. Okay. So when it comes to that, we have 3, 6, 9, and 12-week programs. Think of them as 3 week is I just want to walk my dog. 6 is walk my dog, go to the park. 9 is walk my dog, go to the park, go to restaurants. And then 12 is everything, plus I go to the dog beach, I go hiking, she's gonna be off leash in unenclosed areas, go to my friend's house. I'm gonna do everything with my dog, okay? So you're in the 6 week plus-ish range, okay? So the way it would break down is, if you did 6 classes, because the way I approach it is I only teach what you're gonna use. So I'll ask you, what do you want to cover? And you're like, well, can we do this? Well, sure. Okay, as long as we have covered heel for the first class, I'm pretty, I'm able to go in any direction at that point, because heel is what teaches the dog what works. So 6 classes would most likely look as 2 on heal, 2 on recall. So first 2 classes heal, third class we're jumping into recall. When it comes to the reactivity stuff, that would be the variable.
Okay.
So when I cover the first heal class, I'll give you your homework, potentially cover reactivity stuff if there's time, or if I feel like you're taking the information well, because it's a lot of information. You come back class 2, how's it going? Hey Jesse, her reactivity is much, much better. The only time she reacted this week was when the dog started lunging and barking at her. Okay, and I'm like, okay, and what about everything else? And everything else she's great. I go, awesome. That's like 98% of it, right? We're gonna make a couple of adjustments. We work in a second class of heal. You come back, class 3, how's it going? You know, she's still struggling with dogs barking at her, but it's much better. Okay, and then I'll ask you, like, do you feel like it's getting better, or do you feel like it's staying static or whatever? And you'll say, like, it's static, and I'll go, okay, raise your number now. You know, so we have to, because we want to not only stop her being reactive back, but we want to stop her and deter her from having it, from her repeating it again. Right, that's what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
So then that's just adjusting the power. And because correcting behavior versus teaching obedience is very different, but also very easy. So aversives are meant to stop things. Okay, so growing up I was raised old school, I was spanked. So to give you an example, I only talked back to my mom once in my life. That was it. One correction from my mom for talking back was all I needed. Okay, so dogs are very similar. So if teaching, and it's not the heel that's fixing the reactivity, it's the discipline. It's the fact that you're nipping and biting her with the e-collar, and it puts dogs in a different headspace. Okay, so like when my mom used to tell me, like, don't do that, it was only don't do that until I got spanked for the first time. Now don't do that has a totally different meaning, right? Same thing for dogs. So like right now, because you know, with the positive only based training, the problem is, well, if the dog one doesn't perform the behavior that I tell them to, what's the consequence? They don't get the treat. Well, that's not a consequence for a dog. Or 2, positive reinforcement is meant to motivate the dog to repeat something, right? It's not meant to stop a behavior. So then if the dog becomes reactive, what do I do with the food? Right? Like some people try to redirect their dog.
She doesn't care.
There's too much stress. She doesn't care about the food. That's where reverses come into play. Okay, so like if another dog were to be around while she's lunging and barking, and they go like, hey, I don't like Riley, I don't like when you lunge and bark, they would just come up and bite her. They wouldn't sit her down and say, hey, it's very disrespectful that you lunge and bark at your neighbor's dog, right? They don't have that kind of conversation. So with the e-collar, we can do 2 things. We can shape behaviors like sit, stay down, go play seal. We can also deter behaviors. We can also stop lunging. We can stop barking. We can stop reactivity because it's a consequence. So then when we're training, when we do the heel, a lot of times just the structure and the indirect discipline of being bitten by the remote will resolve a lot of reactivity stuff. So then it's kind of a spur of the moment, oh, this dog just started lunging and barking at her, that we have to address because it's so abrupt. Plus that dog is throwing a threat, right? The dog was like, oh, and she's like, hey, well, you know, I'm gonna bark right back at you. So that we're kind of teaching her, like, yes, that dog is trying to bully you, but you can't reciprocate. You still have to like behave yourself, right? So that's where the e-collar can do both. It can both teach the obedience that we're wanting to achieve, but then also deter her from doing behaviors. Also, it's a depressive button. Does that all make sense?
Absolutely.
So after class 2, I always, if I'm dealing with reactivity, I'll ask, like, what would you like to cover? And a lot of times, if it is reactivity stuff, it's just, here's information. Okay, because I've tried to do the whole, like, let's create reactivity, and most of the time, like, the dog doesn't do anything. So then it's just like wasted time. I'd rather you ask questions and me tell you like answers, and then you go out and practice. Okay. If I have to try to provoke reactivity, if it's like really like bothersome, then I go, okay, we'll try, but I can't guarantee it will happen. Okay. Otherwise, if reactivity is going well, class 3 we're jumping into recall. Okay. So that's going to be class 3 and 4. Class 5 and 6 would be your variables. So behavior being the variable, so everything's going good there. We just keep teaching more obedience. Or if like something happened with the separation anxiety. With separation anxiety, in my book, is the hardest thing to address because it happens when you're gone. And technically, like unless your dog is barking or whining, there's like you can't correct the dog for destroying the carpet because you're gone. But if she's barking, that's different. Because then if she barks, there's bark collars. She's calling a dog, she barks, it corrects her, and she thinks, okay, there is correction when maybe when mom is gone. So then that puts the dog in a different headspace. When it comes to socialization, if you would like to socialize her, I would show you how. Okay. So then if you have like a friend or family that has a dog or whatever, and you're like, hey Jesse, she's doing great with all the walking stuff, I would like to know how to introduce her to dogs correctly. I can help with that. Okay. And that's not anything that we do for her necessarily. It's really me teaching you, this is the realities of dog behavior. And this is how dogs should technically socialize, not be whole like, oh, here's a cute dog down the street. Let's see how it works out. Okay. So dogs meeting on leash in my book is not a good thing. A lot of fights happen that way because when dogs greet face to face, it's confrontational. Dogs greet nose to butt. Humans greet face to face. Hi, how are you? Shake hands and all that stuff, right? For a dog, greeting on leash face to face, too confrontational a lot of times. I've even seen people go like, oh, my dog is friendly, and my dog too, and they come to greet and they get into a fight. And it's because of the approach. When it comes to dog parks, there's too many variables. There's people that bring dogs to dog parks that shouldn't be there. I've had clients' dogs be attacked by dogs at the dog park. There was a couple of years ago an incident where somebody took their dog to the dog park and attacked a corgi, and they just took their dog and left. Didn't say anything when the dog needed stitches, sutures, and drains. The dog was pretty bad. And nothing. So her socializing with friends' dogs and family's dogs is more realistic because you would see them again.
That's definitely where I'd like to. I don't see her bringing her back to dog parks, but I would love for her to get along with like my family's dogs, be able to bring her home and not have the stress.
Sure.
So.
And that, even though you have the insight, we can't make her like a dog. Just like someone can't make you like someone. That's your own thing, right? So we have a structured way of introducing dogs, and it could go south the first time, and then the 20th time, they're best buds. It's something that you could practice and repeat, and then with the hopes and intentions of that they would acclimate to each other. Okay. When it comes to daycare stuff, I get plenty of dogs here that were picked up from other daycares for like concerning behavior, but it's because most daycares are just, here's 30 dogs in a room, and then it's a free-for-all. We don't do that here. We do smaller groups. We do about 8 to 12 dogs to a group. We get some dogs here that do well with smaller groups, or just a couple of dogs, and then we just pair those dogs together. We don't make the dogs try to socialize in a big group if we don't feel as if like that's their thing. It's like some people like to go to parties. Some people don't like to go to parties. It's the same thing for dogs. So, and we had a couple of dogs that I trained that went to other daycares and were like playing. And then when they came here, it literally took them like 20 times before they started playing. And the owners asked, like, why was it my dog goes to this daycare and it's great, but then over here has a problem? Like, because here there's rules. So the dogs are less likely to just be opened up and like be crazy because they don't want to step out of the line. So it just took them more reps before they were like, oh, okay, like as long as I behave and I don't do this and I don't do that, like I can play and have fun, right? We regulate the energy of the play. We don't let it go past like 4 to 5. Because then that's where like fights tend to happen because there's too much energy. If we have lots of dogs here that I've trained, or we are training, and we reinforce everything. So if they do e-collar and stuff, they do stationary work, which is a place command. They do treadmill time. They do playpen time if they're social. They do decompression time in the kennels, so that it's not like constant go. And then we reinforce the training throughout the day. So like they would use the heel, they would use the stay, they would use the place command or whatever. We don't go out of our way to train the dog, but we apply the training as the day goes by. Questions on any of that stuff?
I don't think so. I feel like one question that's coming up is I probably would want to start with like the in-person training for thinking about daycare, but then I'm thinking like I'm gonna probably have a dog walker and like is it
about like them reinforcing it?
Like should I be trying to have them do it? Like
so in Chicago, most likely if it's a company, they won't do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, will it affect your training? No, because dogs learn by association.
Yeah.
So what she'll learn is, oh, when mom's around, I gotta, behave
Okay.
myself, can't be reactive. But when the dog walker's around, I can let him bark.
Okay.
There are some dog walkers. It's usually like the kind of like private owned. It's a solo person.
I usually find them on like Rover.
Gotcha. So it all depends, but then you have to work with them and show them. The nice thing about e-collar is that it transfers very easily.
Okay.
So it doesn't require that person to like become a dog trainer to learn how to use e-collar. It's like super simple. So like when we do our boarding trains and we work with our clients, it's very easy to transfer everything over as long as they're pressing the button at the right intensity and then doing a couple body language things. It's like an 80% like transfer rate.
Okay.
And then the biggest thing that holds people back is how high they're willing to go on the collar. So like a lot of people feel bad because they think they're hurting their dog. And like let's say she needs 65 to behave, and you're only going 45, like she's not gonna behave.
Okay.
She needs more than what you're willing to like give.
Okay.
So as long as you're willing to go to the extent needed, there's no reason why we can't get the results that you're wanting.
Okay.
But when people ask like, well, with the training and everything, like shouldn't the dog learn to be a good dog? I know that's not how dogs work. That's like a human thing, and not even humans do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, other questions?
What was I thinking? Oh yeah, so like, you said like in the beginning they have a little bit, you may see more nervousness associated with using the collar. Does that, I think you sort of answered this, but like in general, like do you think she might have like an increase in nervousness, like in all settings, like more fear, like about like me or anything like that? Do you ever see that?
No, it's related to the collar.
Okay.
And like people think sometimes too, like, is the dog gonna make the dog not like me? And I go, no, the dog doesn't know where it's coming from. So like you might find when you put the collar on, she might shake in the beginning, right? Because she's like, oh, what's gonna happen?
Yeah.
But that's why exposure is important.
Okay.
So like, have you ever been skydiving?
No.
Do you think that would be stressful?
Yes.
Okay, so let's say you go skydiving once a month.
Right.
You kind of get used to it. It's gonna take you a bit, right?
Yeah.
Now if you go skydiving every day,
Yeah.
you're gonna get over it very quickly.
Yeah.
Right. So same thing with the e-collar, and also for you have to be not only exposing her but getting her through it.
Yeah.
So like if you do it, what I mentioned earlier, where like she needs 65 but you're only going to 45, you're actually prolonging the process because you're not willing to take her over the threshold.
Okay.
You're exposing her to it and stressing her out, but you're not getting her to overcome it, and now you stay stuck in this kind of limbo.
Okay.
Okay. So her recovery time, every dog is different. It could be very quick. It can take a long time. I can't comment on that.
Yeah.
But I do know that for the dog, if the owner's just doing their work, doing what needs to be done, and just practicing, also your energy about it. You always see us as neutral and upbeat when we train. Yeah. But if it's like, oh Riley, I know it's time to train, right? She's like, well, if you don't like it, then I don't like it. Yeah. Right? So that's also another factor. But otherwise, I've been using this tool for like over 10 years. Yeah. Like it's right after they get off-leash control. It's the only tool that can guarantee as close to 100% guarantee of regaining control should something happen. Yeah. Like I've had clients' dogs run away from fireworks. I've had clients' dogs run towards the street. There's been client dogs coming across coyote in Lincoln Park. Like all this crazy stuff, And e-collar's always been able to come in and like address the situation.
That's good.
I had a client who had just had their first class, and I didn't see him until 2 weeks later. And then they took their dog to the to the park. Early in the morning, no one was there. And the dog is dog reactive, and then like the arch nemesis came into the park and saw their dog and started running over. So then after only one class, they were able to stop because both dogs started charging, stop their dog and get their dog to return while they were caught up to grab the other dog and like stop something, right? And that was all just in one class. And it wasn't anything that I taught them. It was just they were thinking on the fly. They're like, we don't want these two guys getting in contact with each other, and they just like use the tool that they had. Right. Okay. So even in situations like that, it allows you to come back in and get control without needing to have a leash or like have physical control of your dog.
Okay.
Okay. Other questions?
I don't think so.
When it comes to starting and stuff,
Yeah.
I'm super booked right now.
Yeah.
So I think Maria told me I'm booking into June, July right now.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of a wait. That also depends on your availability.
Mm-hmm.
Most people are evenings and weekends. So if there's daytime availability, she may be able to get you in sooner.
Yeah, no, I'm probably gonna be looking at evening, weekend.
Okay. There is the option of working with my trainer Enrique.
Okay.
He could most likely get you in sooner. I know he's booked up a couple of days already, because I just opened up his schedule like I think 2 weeks ago to try to take off some pressure for me and take one of the easier cases. This one for me seems pretty straightforward because we deal with this stuff all the time.
Yeah.
But you have to talk to him.
Yeah.
So if you end up booking with Enrique, what Maria would do is just pass you off to Enrique. He handles his own schedule.
Okay.
He would see what you can do and then if he can get you in. Okay. Otherwise, if you want to work with me, you deal only with Maria, as Enrique has nothing to do with my calendar.
Okay.
And then he doesn't even know what my calendar looks like.
Okay.
So Maria, she gets your availability and stuff. She also has to process the people ahead of you that are onboarding, and then also just consultation requests and everything. So she's trying to fit you into pockets.
Yeah.
In regards to the collar, how much does Ronnie weigh?
She's about 60 pounds.
60? So I put her on the Dr. Black edition, and Maria will send you this information. It's meant for 70 pounds and over. The reason why I suggest that is there's a few things we have to account for. Size of dog, breed, temperament. Are there any behavioral issues like reactivity?
Right.
Is there any other things like anxiety? Because one, anxiety can override the collar. Reactivity, the dog's like adrenaline, right, will override the collar. So I'm thinking, if I'm like, well, I have a 60-pound dog who can become anxious and reactive, I'm gonna need a lot more power to override. So it's the best collar there is. It's perfectly safe to use. I could use it on my 8-pound Chihuahua.
Okay.
All it means is the collar below that one is output. So on a lower power collar, you might need like 60 for her, and on the higher power collar, you might be at 35, 40.
Okay.
So it gives you just a little bit of a bigger of a window to work with. The most common question I get is, when does the e-collar go away? In my book, when you need it, it doesn't.
Right.
Okay. So because you can't account for life, off-leash dogs, all that stuff.
Yeah.
The other thing is what's called opportunistic behavior, which all animals do, including humans. Like the most common thing that people do is they speed on the expressway, but when they see a squad car, they slow down. So it's the same thing for dogs. I like to refer to the e-collar as a cop on a collar. When it's present, the dog will know, okay, I gotta behave myself because there's still a consequence. When it's not present, the dog will learn like, oh, okay, you don't have a means of making me do something, right? So you're gonna push the boundary a bit. Has nothing to do with the training methods or my skills as a trainer. It's just how it is. And in any method of training that you use, if you remove the motivator, performance will always dip. So if you're doing positive reinforcement, a lot of people complain when they don't have a treat, the dog doesn't do it. Okay. Same thing with positive punishment, because it's technically what this is, adding something bad.
Yeah.
Is you remove the negative, and now goes, oh, so I don't really have to do it, and then you get that, right? So
if it's like, if say it's in a situation where if I was leaving her home alone for the day, are you saying like I should leave the collar on? Then okay, it's more just any time I would be going out and any time when I would need it.
Correct. Yeah, like if you're gonna go off leash to the park.
Right.
If you're gonna go on a walk with your friend to like socialize her with another dog.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you would have your collar on.
Yep.
And it's not that you're always using it. It's just that it's present.
It's there. Yeah.
Just in case something happens, or just in case she decides like, hey, what happens if I don't listen today? And then the collars last a really long time. I've had mine for like 8 years, 9 years. The only issue I've had is like the battery dies. It's a rechargeable lithium battery like your cell phone, which you can replace either through the company of Dogtra. If it's under a year, it's covered under warranty. If it's over a year, they send you like a battery replacement pack. It's like 25 bucks.
Okay.
Or you can send your collar and then you pay a fee and then they'll replace it for you and send it back. Otherwise, as long as you, how do you say, don't get a lemon, which if you get a lemon, I can tell, because when you start to move the dial, it'll go like 20 to 40, like very easily, as opposed to 20, 21. So we test our collars here to make sure that they're working or functioning correctly. If you get your collar on Amazon, I suggest that you take your collar, turn it on, fiddle with it, see if anything looks weird or off, so that if it is off in the numbers or whatever, you can send it back, return it, exchange it, and get a correct working one. If you get it through us, and if it's under 30 days and something happens, I just take your collar and give you a new one. I deal with doctor myself. If it happens after 30 days, you can send it to Dog Truck for repair, and then we'll just provide you with the loaner. Okay. Anything else?
Well, there was one other, you were talking about anxiety and everything, and I realized there was like one more setting that I'm curious about. Nail clipping.
Oh, sure.
Is like a big issue. Like she hasn't had her nails clipped in like a year because like I can't do it anymore myself because she will not like sit still. She freaks out, and the vet techs can't do it anymore either. She doesn't get aggressive, but she's like very like, I don't know, she shakes and she's like running away and pulling and everything. So I'm curious whether you've done any like training with that as well.
So when it comes to nail clipping, yes and no.
Okay.
It's simple, it just takes time.
Okay.
So when it comes to nail trimming, because dogs aren't meant to have their nails clipped, a lot of them will have a problem with it. So you can use the collar to help calm her down, but then we also have to pair it with something positive like food to counter condition her. Like, so you're telling her, okay, if you freak out, this happens, but if you don't freak out, good things happen. And you balance those things out. And it's literally like you grab her paw, you show her the nail clipper, you give her a treat, and you just repeat that over and over and over again. And then you slowly progress to the point where you can actually clip her nails. So if you wanted to do something like that, that would push you more like into the 9th class range. And if that was something you really wanted to work on, what I most likely do is we would cover all the stuff you need to cover, and then maybe we have classes 7, 8, 9. I'd cover like the first half of it, and then you go off and you do that for a couple of months. It's like literally that long, and you come back, hey Jesse, I'm this far now. Okay, here's the next step, right? Show it to you, we work on it. We'll see you in a couple of months. And then finally you come back and it's either we're good or it's like we're almost there. Okay, what's going on? Here's the last little bit, we work through it. Okay, go on and practice it. If you have any questions, let me know. So that's a process. Because it's not just like, how do you say, you have to make her feel different about the exercise. At the same time, you can't allow her to spaz out. But it's not as simple as, oh, just shock the dog whenever they try to like get worked up, because then because she's in her mind she's valid for freaking out. Because she's like, what is this thing that you're doing to my paw? Right. So then it's harder to kind of tone the dog down, because in their mind she's thinking like this is like a valid response. Okay. Other questions?
I don't think so. That was kind of the last lingering question.
So if your main concerns are the reactivity and like the recall type stuff, I put you in the 6th class range. Okay. If everything's going great and we do the 2 classes on heal, reactivity is doing really well. We've not seen any kind of spike in her separation anxiety or anything like that. We jump into recall, which would leave classes 5 and 6. And if like everything's going really well, maybe we could even use those for nail clipping, or we can teach stationary control, which is like go here and don't move. So that's the like, if you want to go to like a restaurant with her, plop down the towel, go over here, she goes there, and then she'll be there for a couple hours, no problem. Anything else?
No, that's about it.
Okay. So Maria would get in contact with you, or if you know you want to sign up, you can email her just so she can put you in the queue. Typically what she does is she waits for me to email her, because I give her all the information. I'm like, this is what I suggested, this is the color I recommended. And then once she gets past or through the people that are ahead of you, then she'll respond to you and go like, okay, this is what Jesse recommended. And then she'd ask for your availability so she can cross-reference it to my calendar. Okay, and then she'd give you your prospective start dates. If you're gonna have a consistent schedule, if you do 6 classes, it's for 6 weeks plus 1, that's your time. Okay, so like let's say you pick 7 o'clock on a Friday.
Yeah.
For 6 weeks, 7 o'clock on a Friday is your time. No one, 7 weeks, no one can take that from you, okay? Let's say you have to cancel because you travel a few times. Come that 7th week, if you have a couple classes left over, but you've used up your priority, evenings is a pretty high demand time.
Yeah.
Maria would tell you like, hey, you've used up your priority, we have another person that we need to book, you have 2 classes left, what other days are you available?
Right.
And she'll plug you in to finish your remaining classes.
Okay.
Okay? Other than that, that's pretty much it.
Okay.
I don't really anticipate anything here. Pretty standard stuff that I see all the time, so nothing
Yeah.
ordinary.
Yeah.
And then, oh, by the way, harnesses that promote reactivity.
Harnesses promote,
Yeah, harnesses promote reactivity, even the front clip ones. You can use it for now,
yeah.
so she doesn't pull and put pressure on her throat and everything.
Yeah.
The harnesses are also one of the causes for reactivity because it causes frustration and agitation. And it's a really common thing. A lot of people put their puppies on harnesses and stuff, and
Yeah.
over the course of time they make their dogs aggressive
Okay.
using that tool. So once if you decide to get started and move forward, you wouldn't need that anymore. You would just
Okay.
be on your flat, she would be on the flat color and then training color.
Okay. All right.
Okay? Anything else?
No, that's it. That's it for me.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm definitely interested. I have to, my schedule is a little crazy because every 6 weeks it changes.
Does it rotate? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's like the one thing I'll just have to figure out, but I definitely am interested in.
Yeah, and Maria can figure that out with you.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not the first person.
Yeah.
You know, like I had someone whose schedule used to rotate every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So 6 weeks isn't bad. Now, if that does happen in like in the middle of training or something, you know, I may not see you for a couple of weeks, and it's nothing bad. It's just more time to practice.
Yeah.
So that when you come back for your, 4th class, 3rd class, whatever, you've had plenty of time to practice and lots of questions, and we can just kind of build off of that.
Okay.
Okay, but it won't inhibit the spinning at all.
Okay.
Yeah, the remote collar gives so much gray area
Yeah.
when it comes to stuff like that. So,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah.
So if you need anything else, you let us know.
Sounds good.
Otherwise, Maria will get in contact with you.
Sounds good. Thank you.